Good morning, good afternoon, maybe even good evening to everyone dialing in. If you don't mind for us, put in the chat where you're dialing in from. I'd love to know where you're coming in from. Of course, you might be able to tell by my accent. I'm from over in England, so in my evening time right now. But I'm sure we have plenty of folks dialing in from the US and all over Europe as well. So what have we got for you today? A discussion about food and beverage, an industry that we hold very dear to our heart here at UpKeep. I'll spare you the details as I want to get me out of the way and get the talent onto the screen. So, but first, I have to run us through a couple of quick logistics. So hopefully my slides are showing the logistics slide. I'll run through that real quick right now. We're aiming for about 30 minutes today, the discussion, the content. At the end of it, so if you start thinking about this right now, we will have an open Q&A. We'll get through as many as we possibly can. So there should be a Q&A box at the bottom here if you see that on your Zoom. If not, use the chat box. Feel free to use that. It just sometimes it gets a little bit busy and it's hard to keep track of the questions. Your best bet if you do want a question answered is the Q&A box. I will definitely see that and I will be able to come to you. So there's that. Keep that in mind, and anything you want to throw in at any time, put it in there. Q&A box is your place. Pretty relaxed conversation today, light on slides. So I think just sit back in and listen. Have any thoughts you want to share in the chat at any point, and this will be a pretty good conversation to go through a bunch of topics. Last thing before I can pass over to my more talented hosts, the thing that I always get asked, the recording, when is it, where will it be, and so on. It will come tomorrow morning, likely by email. If you don't see it, feel free to ask one of the team here from UpKeep and we'll be able to send you the link, but it will be in your inbox. Occasionally it lands in spam, so worth checking there too. Before any more ado, I should say, who is going to be handling the conversations today? So let me introduce Ryan. Welcome, sir. How are you?
I'm doing great. It's a beautiful day here in Los Angeles.
Very good. I wish I had the same weather as you. And John, how are you doing, sir?
Hey, how's it going? I'm also in LA, so definitely enjoying the vibes and plenty of sun out here.
I wouldn't mind it. Can I get a quick one or two sentence bio from both of you? I'll go to Ryan first.
Sure. Yeah. So my name is Ryan. I'm the CEO and founder of UpKeep. My background, I went to Cal Berkeley as a chemical engineer. I worked in a manufacturing plant that was spun out of DuPont Chemicals. I was a process engineer there. Every single day I was thinking about how do we streamline our manufacturing process and make it go better, smoother, faster, run more productively. I was part of the team that was responsible for picking, choosing, implementing maintenance software. And the whole premise of it was better understand downtime, better understand root cause of failures so that we can reduce downtime, increase production throughput. And, did that for a little bit and then quickly pivoted into building a tech company to help solve the gaps in the industry around technology and understanding downtime and improving maintenance process. And, it's been an 11-year journey running UpKeep. We're a team of 150 people. It's been so much fun. And the entire industry is changing so quickly. So really excited to be here, interviewing one of our own, John from Anheuser-Busch, or used to be part of Anheuser-Busch and a few other companies running their maintenance teams, their operations teams, production plants. But maybe I'll pass the baton over to John and have him introduce himself more formally.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. So yeah, my name is John James. I am a solution engineer with UpKeep. I've been with this team for about a couple of years. But as Ryan was saying, I spent the majority of my career actually working in manufacturing, food and beverage specifically. So some of the names that might come to mind as far as my career, L'Oreal, Anheuser-Busch, Keurig Dr. Pepper is where I spent most of my years in different facets from operations to ultimately becoming a maintenance manager with Keurig Dr. Pepper. So many years in the trenches, high-speed packaging lines, dealing with extreme temperature zones, and having to manage very strict compliance audits. My main goal was to try to keep the lines running. And for the most part, throughout my career, I was using legacy systems like SAP and Oracle. So I've lived with the exact challenges we're going to be talking about today. I've been through it not only from an admin and leadership standpoint, but also inherently through my team members. Ease of use definitely wasn't a strong thing, or wasn't really non-existent back when I was working, especially from a mobile standpoint. So really looking forward to talking about some of that today.
Thank you both. Very good. John, just if you have any connects back at Dr. Pepper, it's my favorite drink. I always have one for a webinar today. I forgot. So if you got any hookups over there, let me know. But over to you, Ryan. I'm going to give you the mic. Show is yours, my friend.
All right. Thank you, Ollie, and I appreciate you setting all this up. So the goal of today is to have a discussion around food and bev. What's happening in the industry? What are some of the current trends? And ultimately, what we, hopefully being in maintenance and operations, can do to prepare for what's coming for our industry. Before we get too deep into food and bev, I would love to just hear a little bit more about your history, your experience, John, working on the plant floor at Anheuser-Busch. Just hearing what a good day, what a bad day looked like, and any memorable days that really stuck out, and just hearing about your experience working in food and bev.
Yeah, sure. So, spent over a decade in food and beverage. A good day was any day the lines were running well, right? No holds, no safety incidents, of course, and not really having to deal with a lot of downtime issues. A bad day could be a bunch of things. Like I'd walk into maybe sanitation, did a cleaning the night before, maybe sprayed down a sensor or an electric panel, and now we're scratching our heads trying to figure out how to get the lines running. Pair that with extreme temperatures. Maybe during our busy season in the summer, it's super hot. We're trying to make sure nobody dehydrates and people are stretching and things like that. It was a lot of competing priorities back then, but ultimately you just wanted to make sure everybody was safe. We made a quality product, and we kept the lines running. So that was my main focus day in and day out.
So, no, really appreciate you sharing that. It feels like in the food and beverage industry, manufacturing here in the US at least, these bad days continue to happen. And it sounds like it is increasing as the years goes on. We have a report here that says that food and beverage is actually one of the few industry sectors where the cost of unplanned downtime is actually rising. The amount of unplanned downtime is actually rising over the past 5 to 10 years. So I'd be curious from your perspective, John, like what's changed over the last 10 years? Why is it actually getting harder to control? And, why is cost actually rising?
Yeah, I mean, you're hitting the nail on the head. Costs are rising, and that's across the board. Where we're talking about labor, raw materials, cost is going to continue to go up. And as a former maintenance manager, we have the KPIs that we're held to, right? PM compliance, obviously uptime, throughput, and of course a budget. So when you're held to a specific financial threshold, a lot of times you're going to have competing factors there when it relates to trying to keep the line running versus saving a buck or saving a dollar. I can even recount back when I was maintenance manager, there'd be sometimes we pushed back certain PMs because didn't want to take the hit during that quarter or during that month from a financial standpoint. So they're going to have competing priorities in that matter. It's almost like that chicken and egg trap, right? You have to justify actually taking the line down to do an overhaul or justify actually replacing that asset or piece of equipment by first seeing the loss. And that's what a lot of, I'd say, manufacturers are dealing with today. Because maintenance is not necessarily looked at as a profit center, but more as a cost center, we actually have to take on that loss, take that hit before we can actually justify moving in a positive direction from an equipment asset standpoint. This promotes a run to failure environment. So typically we're just running, trying to keep the lines up and going. And then once we hit a run to failure moment, we're now accruing even more downtime if we would have just taken the time out to address the issues that needed to be addressed. And that's not just from a throughput standpoint. We're talking about emergency labor, potentially overtime. We're talking about waste and scrap on the lines, especially in the food and beverage space. A lot of times when you're running, you don't really have rework opportunities. So that's even more of a cost from a downtime standpoint. Now, how can we address this? It's really to just be more productive and more preventive, and even predictive, if you will, from a maintenance standpoint. That's how we reverse this unplanned downtime trend.
So, kind of like the beauty of UpKeep is we serve a lot of different industries, and we serve manufacturing as a whole, as one of these very broad industries. We've got discrete manufacturers, we've got automotive, we've got consumer products as customers of UpKeep, but food and beverage seems to be uniquely different. And I'd be curious, like, what makes running a maintenance team in the food and beverage industry more uniquely different and harder than other industries in manufacturing?
Well, I think there's definitely a component of safety. Not only the safety of your employees, but like their food safety, right? You're producing a product that's going to be consumed by the public, by your consumers. And so it's very important that you have very strict guidelines around making sure that the process is safe, and you're not going to hurt somebody ultimately, whether that's internally or your customers out in the world. So that first and foremost is going to be one of the biggest, I say, differentiators between some of the other manufacturers. Um, what else can I say? That's the only thing that really comes to mind at the moment relative to food and bev.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's I think that is such an important topic because again, like the products that you would manufacture again is going into people's bodies is the food that we consume. We talk about perishability and how important food safety is.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, it's very very different and yeah, definitely one to highlight.
I would also say, it just came to mind. I also say typically, at least in my experience, from a food and beverage standpoint, a lot of processes are very fast paced. So back at both Keurig Dr. Pepper and Anheuser-Busch, we're running thousands of cans a minute or bottles a minute. And so when you're running at those speeds, any bit of downtime, whether it's a minute or an hour, is a huge impact from a financial standpoint. And
Yeah,
so you want to definitely make sure that you're being proactive and you're taking the time to say replace filters, seals, things like that to make sure that you're not having any quality issues and that you can keep the line going at a good pace.
yeah. And RJ from our chat here is pointing out some really good points here. You have unit margins much lower than typical other products manufacturers. You're chasing volume. So you mentioned when you have these low margin, extremely high volume plants, and you're running at such high speeds, every single minute of downtime matters.
Absolutely.
So like you alluded to something around the labor shortage. You alluded to it's been very difficult to bring on new folks. We've got a stat from another one of our reports saying that there's going to be a projected shortage of about 1.9 million manufacturing workers over the next decade just here in the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
So we've talked about the labor shortage many times. But would love to hear your experience at the actual plant level. Like, how did this labor shortage affect you, affect the decisions of your plant, your maintenance team? Where did it, hurt the most? And, how did you guys manage this difficulty hiring?
Sure. And you said something really important. That's not happening just in California. It's happening everywhere, right? There's a general labor shortage across the board, where we're talking food and beverage or any other manufacturing vertical. And my experience working in lean manufacturing is that you just had to really focus on your biggest pain points or your heavy hitters, if you will, from a productivity, quality, or safety standpoint. Um, and in order to do that, you had to really rely on the data that you had available. You can't just white knuckle your way through your issues in the plant. You have to spend your time focused on the things that are really going to drive impact and improvement from a performance standpoint. And it's important to make sure you have good, reliable data in order to do that. And one of the great things I like about UpKeep is that we really promote ease of use at the mobile level or at the floor level. Out in the field, your technician can easily just speak to their device and document what they're doing in a work order, or reach out to Nova, our AI agent, to help troubleshoot an issue that they might not have seen before. So from a labor shortage standpoint, you focus, I guess, more so on that 80-20 rule. 20% of the fixes you put in place are going to make the biggest impact or affect let's say, your OEE and throughput from a majority standpoint. But in order to do that, you have to make sure that you have easily accessible, good quality data. I'll give you an example from early on in my time at Keurig Dr. Pepper. as a maintenance manager, we kept seeing that we were having a lot of downtime across our can lines. And the hearsay I was getting from the floor was that it was the palletizers, right? That palletizers kept being a bottleneck, was shutting us down. And this is the only reason why we weren't hitting our numbers. So I took that upon myself to actually Gemba, which is a TPM term for being in place, going out in the floor in the field to see what was actually going on. And I did see from time to time we did have stops at the palletizer, but it wasn't our bottleneck. It turned out when you actually looked at the real issue, it was that operators weren't properly loading cartons at the packer. And so this is more of a training or personnel issue, not necessarily a maintenance issue at the palletizers. But being able to have good data, being able to act on that information is very impactful, and it's not only going to help benefit your KPIs from a unplanned downtime standpoint, but we can have more of those good production days like I was talking about earlier.
That was really interesting, John. Like what I hear you saying is, we've got this labor shortage. It's, we can do all that we can do to try to hire more people, make the role more enticing. But what I hear you saying actually is focus on the 80-20 rule, which is it's less about in this weird, funny way, trying to fill the gap because the gap is the gap. Instead, do what you can with what you have. And what you have today is a labor force that is working in your plant, the operators on the shop floor, and prioritizing that top 20%, because that's what's really going to move the needle. Did I get that right, John?
Oh, you're spot on, Ryan. Yeah, you only have 24 hours in the day, right? And then you got to use the cards that's dealt to you. So that's what I would say. Focus on the biggest drivers.
Yeah, and I could imagine a lot of companies are probably burning out their teams right now, saying we've got to complete every PM, we've got to do every single task and inspection. But again, like what I hear you say is maybe it's not about that. Maybe if you try to do that, you're going to always be running at this shortage of labor and shortage of time, and instead just figure out and prioritize what is the 20% that's going to really move your business.
Absolutely.
So I mean, we've been talking quite a bit about like the struggles of food and bev. We've been talking about this high volume, low margin, and then you couple that with this labor shortage. People throw out this stat quite often around the cost of downtime, and that's generally around $10,000 an hour. And I'd love to hear from your perspective, John. Was that pretty close to your world? Was it around $10,000, or was it much, much more than that?
Yeah, I'd say that's a little conservative for my world. But again, we're running high-speed can lines, bottle lines, just to do some quick math here. So like every hour of downtime is going to cost thousands of dollars at Anheuser-Busch. And the reason is, if you go and get a case of beer from the store, it's likely going to be upwards of $20, right? But we were doing about 60 to 80 cases an hour, or sorry, a minute. So every minute of downtime is thousands of dollars. So keep that in mind as far as food and beverage. It can be, depending on the product, fairly low, but coming from beer and from soft drinks, that adds up pretty quick. The other issue from a loss standpoint is going to be around the inherent losses of your productivity. So not only are you losing that time that you just can't get back on the lines, but now you have to make that up in order to meet that delivery. So we're talking about potentially overtime, working on the weekends. We're talking time and a half, downtime, double time from a labor standpoint. We're talking also about scrap and waste on the lines, because a lot of times in food and beverage, you don't have the option to just rework that product. Some of it's going straight to the trash or on the floor, depending on maybe it's in a hot zone in your pasteurizer, or you have an oven in your process. So you have a bottleneck there. I had a customer that I worked with where they made bread loaves, and anytime they had any downstream issue, they would just have to keep running the conveyors out to a chute to put that bread directly to a floor to trash. That's not coming back. That's all completely wasted raw material and product. So again, really, really think about it. $10,000 can sound pretty conservative. It might even be the floor, if you will, of the potential loss you can have when you have those unforeseen downtimes and costs.
Really appreciate you sharing that. So when you had your downtime, cost of downtime, would you include the cost of double time? Would you include the cost of scrub? Would you include the cost of it's like this coordination cost too when things go off schedule.
Absolutely, yeah.
And do you have any recommendations for our listeners on how to best calculate the cost of downtime, the true cost of downtime?
Yeah, I would just factor all those things I was saying into it. It's not just the cost of your case per minute or per hour. It's going to be those other external factors. It's going to be your overtime. It's going to be your scrap. If you have any SLAs with your customers, there's going to be any penalties that you have to pay as well if that product's not on the truck or on the shelf. So you got to factor in all those things, and that really helps when we're going back to talking about those competing priorities and justifying the rebuild or justifying the replacement of the machine. When you're trying to make your ROI argument, taking into account all those factors helps to really further that argument or that initiative.
Yeah, definitely. So we've covered everything from hiring to cost of downtime, things that are unique to food and bev. I feel like we've talked about a few of them, but maybe one that I'd love to double click into is inspections and audits. This is another like uniquely to food and bev facilities that, yeah, again, like these are products that that are going to be consumed by their customers and consumers like us.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that with a lot of companies we've spoken with, like some do audits very, very well, and
Mm-hmm.
others kind of treat it like a fire drill. Oh, shoot, auditor's coming. We gotta scramble, clean up, and then get everything prepped for the auditor.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd be curious, like, what do you feel like separates a facility that's genuinely good and ready for an inspector any day of the week? You choose any day of the year versus the ones that are in scramble mode, saying like, "Oh shoot, they're coming tomorrow. We gotta, yeah, get ready for the inspector or auditor."
Yeah, yeah. And I feel like most of my career was the latter. It was painstaking when you knew an audit was coming up or you was expecting a surprise visit at some point in time. And you're just like, man, I got to get all these binders ready. And, I was very heavily relying on paper-based documentation, and just really cumbersome processes, right? And so what I would say the difference between being in I'd say firefighter mode and just being by default, just ready to tackle that audit confidently is going to be in your day-to-day processes, right? Especially around documentation, those inspections you were talking about, checklists, your maintenance, of course. If that's all just well documented and part of your natural workflow, it becomes a lot easier to just be 24/7 audit ready. And a lot of times that's not the case when you're leaning on a legacy maintenance system or where you're putting up your work orders on paper or on a whiteboard. You're going to end up losing a lot of detailed information. Things are going to fall through the cracks. And so instead of being confident in your ability to pass this audit, you're crossing your fingers and hoping you get lucky that the auditor doesn't ask a specific question or look for a certain thing, because now essentially you might end up with either a fine or penalty, or you have to worst case shut down your plant in order to finally meet expectations. I did have an old plant manager I used to work with that he said, you want to try to make it easy to do right, hard to do wrong, right? And that what that means is really you want to try to build your system such that it's easy for you to do the right thing, such as documenting what you did, such as taking pictures of the final product of what you PM'd or work on. And then you don't have to worry about it. It doesn't become an afterthought or an added action. It's just inherently built into your natural workflow. So I think those audit ready teams have built those systems into their day to day where it's not an afterthought or not something I necessarily have to get ready to knock out an audit for. It's just this is our day to day routine.
Yeah, hard to get wrong, easy to get right. And what I hear you say is just how making things easier for the team to input good data so that you're ready for an audit at any point and it's not that firefighting, scrambling. One thing that we talk about quite a bit, and I know that you're very, very well versed in, John, is sensors and remote condition monitoring. Like this is something, this is an area where we can help our customers and deploy remote condition monitoring sensors to support all of the audit data and details that are needed for it
Mhm.
without having to ever go into a system and type anything in and have one of your operators go out and log a inspection. Maybe we'd love to hear from your perspective. Like, how was remote condition monitoring done at previous plants you worked at, and what have you seen our best customers in the food and beverage industry do to utilize remote condition monitoring sensors to help with audits and inspections?
Sure. Yeah. The example that comes to mind most would be called with the Anheuser-Busch. We had a lot of different sensor data points that we captured throughout the brewing and fermentation process in order to make sure that the beer would be in spec when it came time to filter and package it. So things like your temperature, things like your CO2 and oxygen levels to prevent oxidation. We were tracking that on a regular basis, and we had alerting set up so that we can quickly address the issue if something was out of threshold or out of that limit. Um, so I think it's a really great tool as opposed to having someone have to go out with a meter or something like that on a specific cadence because again you're going to have competing priorities, especially when you're in a lean manufacturing environment. Those checks might get missed or they might be late, and then if that happens, you're going to end up potentially dumping all that product that you might have. That's going to cost you thousands of dollars, right? So being able to have real time data that you can act on and get alerted, whether it be via text or email, I think goes a long way. And that's something that I feel is definitely a strength that we have with our Edge product is being able to set that up, set up trending, so you can even get a little more predictable over time as you see like, all right, last time we had this failure, we saw the temperature got to this level or the vibration spiked, so we can see some lagging or leading indicators before an event happens, and we can act on it before we accrue that downtime.
Yeah, definitely. All right. I know we are approaching up on our 30-minute mark. I'm going to ask you this one last question, and then we'll open it up to the rest of the Q&A that we got from our audience here. John, I just want to say thank you so much for sharing all of your experience. It's been awesome to hear about your experience in having this dual perspective. Obviously, one being a maintenance manager at a large food and beverage facility, and also the other side of the coin, implementing software technology, being on the upkeep side. It's really cool to hear and see your perspective. If I were to put you in the shoes of yourself, let's call it like 10 years ago, as a maintenance manager, what would you do differently, knowing what you know now, 10 years later? Um,
Mm-hmm.
what would you do differently?
Yeah, great question. So, yeah, 10 years ago, again, being a maintenance manager, very much in firefighter mode, I'm just trying to keep my head above water. I'm trying to keep the lines going, but I also found myself kind of chasing my tail quite a bit. And I would say to myself that you don't necessarily have to, stick to the status quo as far as how things are, right? Like you don't have to stick to having to write your work order routine on a whiteboard or on a cork board, or just really rely on a paper process. Like take some time out of your busy day. I know you're very busy, right? But take some time out of your busy day and look at what technology is out there, what's available to you, so you can work more efficiently. Like you went to school as an industrial engineer, efficiency should be important to you, right? So the fact that your technicians are taking 15 to 30 minutes at the end of shift and during a pivotal time during shift handover to capture their notes, and the fact that you're losing information on a regular basis in the form of these work orders, that's a problem. But you're so focused on just trying to keep the lines running that you're not addressing some of your root cause or issues. So I would just say you don't have to settle for that. You don't have to live with that pain from an admin standpoint, or even at the floor level with your technicians. They don't have to live with that either. There's this other technology out there that can help make your life and their life a lot easier. And you talked about before, like what a bad day and a good day looks like. When you build a repeatable process, when you build a smooth process for doing your job, the technicians they want to get in, they want to do some maintenance, and they want to get home to their families safely. They don't want to have the pressure of I got to get the lines up and running from all this reactive work that's being generated on a day in and day out basis. It's a lot easier to come in and just have a plan, execute that plan, and go home, right? So when you make their job easier, they're a lot happier. You're going to be happier, and your KPIs are going to reflect that as well. And so everybody's happy. It becomes a what's the word? Oh, like a flywheel, if you will, of just positive energy, and that's going to relate to your KPIs. Eventually, it's going to all flow up and ultimately impact your business positively.
Awesome. I think that's some great words of wisdom. Thank you, John. And again, if I were to sum up what I heard from you, it's just because this is the way that things have always been doesn't mean that it has to be true going forward. So again, really appreciate it. Thank you, John. I know we are just up on time, but I know we've got a few questions from our audience here. Ollie, do you want to help us field some of the questions that we've got?
Yes, we do. There's a few in the chat, so allow me to go through for a moment. But one that I saw a moment ago is how did Dr. Pepper calculate downtime cost? I think that's for John, right?
Okay. Yeah. So going back to what I was saying earlier, we calculated our downtime based off of our throughput value. So depending on the product that we were running, it had a specific price point, so that factored into it. But again, yeah, we also accounted for overtime. We accounted for any waste or loss. For the most part, we usually hit our deliveries, and I don't believe we ever took on any penalties from that standpoint. But that would come into play if we were going to try to make an argument for ROI.
Very good. Any comments you want to throw on top of that, Ryan, or shall I go to the next question?
Yeah.
Next one. Okay. This is a reasonably long one. Do you think assigning each personnel from maintenance to each machine would be a good call? Most of the repairs I saw is due to PLC issues or a very important motor being burnt out. How can we tackle this in-house? Who wants to go first?
It's two different questions. So I'll start with the assigning a maintenance technician to one machine standpoint. That is it's a good thing. It's a double-edged sword. Okay. When I was at Dr. Pepper, we had technicians where we had our bottle line techs and we had our can line techs. But when you're running lean, when somebody is calls out sick or somebody goes on vacation, you open yourself up to even more downtime because you don't have that cross training happening across the different pieces of assets or equipment. So you can do that, but as long as there's some understanding or some at least cross training that's still happening, so that you're still flexible enough to plug somebody else in when the other person's not there. And going back to what Ryan was saying right now, with our labor shortages, it's going to be really important that you have some flexibility amongst your maintenance team.
I'd absolutely agree with that. I think it's great for having just clear lines of ownership when an asset goes down. You know exactly who to call, but there needs to what you're saying, John. There has to be redundancy, and it's overall great skills development too for all the different techs to cross train them in new skills, new assets, new repairs. Definitely recommend that.
Absolutely.
Are you ready for one, Ryan? I think this one's for you.
Go for it.
We've got what will be next for UpKeep CMMS and adapting to the challenging world of AI and condition-based monitoring.
Oh, yeah, I love it. What's next for us? What we've seen from our customers is that our customers, you all want more than just a maintenance platform. What we've seen and heard from a lot of our customers is that they got all of these different silos of data from, not just maintenance, but operations, reliability, finance. Then you have other tools, your remote condition monitoring tools, where data lives in all of these separate systems. And what we've heard largely is that they're getting frustrated. You guys are getting frustrated by having to have so many different logins, trying to build so many different integrations. And so this is the vision. This is the future of UpKeep. We want to help you, our customers, have a single place to go to understand the entire cost of downtime, to understand the entire root cause failure, what happened, when, and where, and why. And we combine what we call active data, technicians going out, and also passive data, the machines, whether that's a PLC, that's a remote condition monitoring sensor. Join all of these data points under one house, one umbrella, to tell the full picture of the asset. This is where we're going, and this is where I'm most excited about. And how this plays in with AI. AI is really great at deciphering, at understanding very large data sets, but it is only as good as the data that you provide it. And also, it is extremely good when you give it the full context. Everything that we were just talking about, when you give it the full context of technician data, remote condition monitoring data, PLC data, you give it finance data, you give it reliability, operations. It is so good when you give it all of the context. And again, this is where we're headed, what I'm most excited about.
Very good. I feel like, Ryan, you teed me up perfectly there to show our final slide before our final question. Hopefully my deck is up on full screen. As Ryan just gave such a good synopsis of what is coming with UpKeep, feel free to take a look for yourself, the QR code here or the link. I'm sure I can throw it into the chat in a moment, but I will leave that up to give people time as I go to our last question. So I think this one may again be for you, Ryan. How can we use UpKeep to improve key food safety requirements, e.g. sanitization before the startup of any machine, QA approvals on maintenance work, setting up specific cleaning points and process to work in tangent with maintenance, recording machinery, deep cleaning for Q&A and QC processes? That was a long paragraph, but the question is coming. What are some key features that UpKeep has that sets it apart from others in that area?
I mean, it's such a good question here, but there's a few like basic things that come top of mind. When we talk to a lot of our customers, things are still being done on paper and pen. You're still running inspections for audits, and it gets done on a piece of paper or clipboard, and then you file it away in a cabinet. And then we were kind of giving that example of when there's an auditor coming, you have to go through that cabinet and pull out all of your records and make sure that you have the entire record, every single date stamped and signed. The most basic thing that I feel like so many companies can do is organize it in a digital system. So I feel like that's like step number one. Step number two, again, like how do you use UpKeep? What makes UpKeep different is we are so much more than just maintenance for audits, inspections, work orders. We're a full platform. So again, now you have full visibility where you can join all of your remote condition monitoring sensors under one umbrella. You can integrate your PLC data into UpKeep. Not only that, we have a product for safety, so you can log all your safety events, because oftentimes work done starts from incidents and corrective action plans. We have a product for safety. That's our UpKeep safety product. If you want to loop in training, certifications, education, so that you know when a piece of equipment breaks, who is certified, who is skilled, and who is trained to repair a motor, fix a pump, change out a compressor. Who has done this training and has the certification. We have a product for that called UpKeep Learn. This is what is so different about UpKeep, and why I believe it makes it uniquely different than all the rest, is because it's all done under one umbrella. Instead of having 5 or 6 or 7 different platforms, when something breaks, when there's a safety incident, when you want to skill up one of your technicians, it's all done under one system, and that's UpKeep. So, as Ollie mentioned, would love for you guys to all check it out if you have any interest. There's that QR code. You can also go directly to our website, upkeep.com, and get start a free trial or get a demo from any one of our team members.
What a way to finish. Thank you, sir. Okay. Everybody in the chat, if you enjoyed the conversation today, please do put in a 10 or give us a high score anyway. Give us a number to tell us that you enjoyed it. While we do that, I'll give thanks to our two speakers who had a great conversation today. Let's come to John first. Thank you, sir. Where can people find and connect with you if they had a question?
Yeah, so I'm at UpKeep. You can do jonathan.james@upkeep.com if you want to send me an email. Definitely open to taking any questions and following up. And again, I'm a solutions engineer, so if you're interested in a demo, I'm definitely happy to jump on and do a demonstration of our product for you as well.
Very good, thank you. And Ryan, appreciate your time and your wisdom through running that conversation. How can people find and connect with you too?
Of course, I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. Find me, Ryan Chan, or shoot me an email. My email is ryan@upkeep.com. I try to respond to every single email that I can, so definitely don't be shy.
I'll take you up on that. Let's see what we can do. Very good. All right. Thank you, everyone. If you made it this far, congratulations. We will send out, as we said, the recording via email. So that will come tomorrow morning, most likely. Have a look out for that. If you don't see it, please do feel free to reach out to any of us by email. As mentioned, we'll get you that recording. With that, that's the end of the show. Hope you enjoyed the conversation. We'll see you on the next one. Thanks, everyone.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.